1. This wasn't in high school, but the military. Without getting into crazy details about everything, there was an instructor that was giving us a 3-week course of munition identification. I was picked to attend because of other skills I had that fit the bill for what they were looking to do for units deploying, but my unit had no idea how deep my knowledge was. On Wednesday, we were given the first test, with the makeup on that Friday, immediately before the second test. Somehow the instructor mixed up the books with the Scantron keys and answer sheets, and I ended up with only like 2 correct, which should have been next to impossible even if blindly guessed on every question, including the about 15 true or false and yes or no question scenarios. I tactfully protest this during a break, and even say if I filled out A all the way down, I would have at least gotten 30 of them right. After that, we had a lunch break, more class, and we were cut loose. When I get to the phone in my car, I have a bunch of missed calls from my first sergeant, platoon leader, first lieutenant, platoon sergeant, SFV, squad leader, SSG, and team leader, sergeant, pissed about my score and that I would challenge my instructor on something they were teaching. The next day, when reviewing the tested materials, but not the test directly, I raised my hand to answer every single question, and when I was picked, I was flawless in my answer, going into much greater detail than the instructor had shown and taught us. Some of the other students are looking at me sideways, as if I should be teaching the course. The instructor holds me back during the first break to chew my ass, saying, "Well, if you applied yourself during the test, you maybe would have done a lot better on the test." Respectfully, I said, "I don't get it. I knew everything, we have went over the last," and he cut me off to chew my ass some more. This is when I gave him the "I don't give a fuck" face, with the side of, "If we were on the street, I'd beat your ass" eyes. But I stood there and took it. My squad leader actually drove down and sat in the back of the class for the first 2 hours of the day of the retest, and the second test on Friday. This little bitch snitched on me again. During the break after the retest and before the second test started, he is hanging with a buddy of his from before, which I found out later he was going to report on how I was acting in class. I got 100s on both tests. For a lunch break, he scoops me up and begins to try to chew my ass, but thinks about it. Apparently his buddy tells him I am the prodigy of the class, and it seems I know more than the guy teaching us. He gives me more than a subtle warning before he heads off. In the afternoon, after the retesters review the materials from the first test and then the second test, another student somehow only got 5 answers right. If I recall correctly, someone, not the instructor, asked what test book did he have, and he said B5. And then it hit me. That was the same book I had for my first test. When I stuck around afterwards, not for an apology, but that would have been the decent thing to do, but to try to explain what likely happened or ask for an explanation, I was met with the harsh response of being cast as a know-it-all. That afternoon, after we released for the weekend, I drove back to my unit area and waited for my unit to do the weekend closeout formation. I went in and explained to my PL and PS what just happened, and emphasized that I don't want them to reveal to the instructor what I told them, and was about to show them my Ordnance Disposal Course certificate, showing them I was actually fully qualified to teach said class, but I agreed to bite my tongue and not flip out. In the closing days for the Practical Application Course walkthrough, he misidentified at least 3 pieces of ordnance, and another was put together so bad it made no sense. I made a mental note to say if given the chance. At the end, I did so very tactfully while standing my ground. He attempts to embarrass me in front of everyone by saying, "Well, Sir Lickrock, I didn't know you went to the same course I took in Virginia." That's when I had his ass dead to rights and I had enough of his shit. I went through the actual EOD course in Redstone Arsenal, then Eglin AFB at the Naval School Explosive Ordnance Disposal, for 9 months. Then later this course when I actually taught this 3 years ago by the XYZ EOD unit for on-the-job OJT training while at Fort Bragg. Someone yelled out, "Goddamn!" a la "I'm the Juggernaut bitch" video. One of the other NCOs present calmed everyone down, but I loudly yelled out, "The only reason I didn't pass the first test and Sergeant Joe didn't pass the retest is because this guy didn't even look at how our answers were wrong. He just used the wrong answer keys on our test and didn't even want to own up to his own mistake. Fuck that guy." He really wanted to flunk me, but knew he couldn't. I would have called him out for his shit, and someone told him about me running the study groups. 2. I'd been working a role in a supply company for around 2 years when this took place. I was a person who took all incoming phone calls, walk-in customers, most orders, and a list of other responsibilities. I was also the person people would unload their own work onto, and being young and naive, I let it happen. To compensate for the insane workload, I would usually stay until 6 p.m., with a couple of days a week having to stay till around 8 p.m., all unpaid as I was salaried from 7:30 a.m. till 4 p.m. I had recently started biking to work, about 30 minutes commute each way, and would change when I got to work at 7:15 a.m. Unfortunately, our boss, who had been with the company for 15 plus years, was moving on, and they had recently hired an outside replacement. New boss was only a couple of years older than myself, younger than most staff, and had come from a large retail chain where metrics were a big deal. One day I arrived at 7:15 a.m. as usual and was met with a group of customers all waiting out front to collect orders, make orders, and discuss accounts. As the only person in the building till around 10 a.m., I started working my way through each customer without having time to get changed. This wasn't a problem, as all our customers were in work gear and just wanted to get in and out as quickly as possible. This carried on all morning. I hadn't even sat down at my computer yet and was firing my way through customers at a great pace. People start rolling in, making their coffees and logging into their computers. I was not offered any help, as was standard. 10 a.m. rolls around, have several customers non-stop for close to 3 hours, and had yet to get a chance to change. This is when new boss arrives. He goes into his office, I assume logs into his computer, checks some emails, etc. I see one of my co-workers enter his office and return to their desk. But I think nothing of it, as I still have 2 or 3 customers standing at my desk while I sort them out. I had just finished with a customer when said co-worker offers to help the other 2. Great, I think. I can get changed and log into my computer finally. Instead, new boss comes up to me within earshot of the customers and other co-workers and asks why I'm not changed as it's now 10:30 a.m. He then tells me he's had complaints and that I've been late. I admittedly had arrived around 5 minutes late a couple of days, due to flat tires and once being knocked off my bike. I explain I have yet to get a chance. He tells me I should be changed and ready to serve customers by 7:15 a.m., and it is unprofessional to be in my biking gear. This is likely due to how I usually dress. See, we did not have a uniform or dress code. My co-workers wore jeans and hoodies and an assortment of comfortable clothing. I myself, wanting to dress for the career you want, not the one you have, would wear dress shoes, pants, and a button-down shirt. Cue my compliance. The next day I arrived at 7 a.m. I changed into my jeans and hoodie. I opened 7:30 after logging in, checking emails, and making coffee. Then I took my lunch break, the full hour which I had yet to do in the previous 2 years. I then logged in at 3:59 p.m. and was at the door by 4 p.m. I continued to do this for most of the time I worked there, later dropping my lunch break to keep up with the workload, but the company probably lost about 16 hours of work each week and 2 full workdays worth. The new boss ended up realizing I was actually the only person doing the majority of the company's front-facing work and eventually relaxed. We're actually friends now, but I still give them shit about how they essentially made me quit my unpaid part-time job for working too hard. 3. I was 17 when my mom finally left my abusive and narcissistic alcoholic dad. Before, during, and for a long time after the divorce, he did everything he could to hurt and humiliate us. We were showered with threats, lies, and Bible verses. For a while, we just endured it, because we were terrified of retaliation from him, and possible legal consequences during the divorce, but I finally snapped. I don't remember specifically which incident was the catalyst for my choice, but it was an especially vicious one. I couldn't do anything which made him look like a victim, or anything which might cause backlash to my family, or anything illegal. I stewed over it for a few days, when the perfect solution fell right into my lap. I play a game which has several types of currency, one of which can be purchased with real money, and is therefore the most valuable currency in the game. Being extremely poor after the divorce, he lied through his teeth about his income, and we couldn't afford to get him investigated. I would often take advantage of the various free offers to earn diamonds. You know the type: watch this ad, earn free diamonds, subscribe to that newsletter, earn free diamonds, start this free trial, earn free diamonds, etc. I never did any of the subscriptions or free trials, as they require real personal information. This particular day I was looking through the various offers and noticed sign up for a free diabetes-friendly cookbook. I was going to just scroll past it when suddenly I had a stroke of evil genius. He keeps saying we owe him for taking care of us for all those years. I should send him a present. I went and grabbed one of the letters he had sent, which had his current address on it, and got to work. The sign-up form was long and required all kinds of unnecessary personal info. I gave it: his name, age, birthday, race, home address, office address, home cell, cell phone, work phone, personal email, work email, and everything else it demanded. And finally, at last, I hit the send button. Then I sat there and laughed and cried and imagined his reaction when he got that diabetes-friendly cookbook. Hopefully, he also got lots of spam calls and mail. I got 3,500 diamonds. Just to clarify, I didn't enter any information which isn't publicly available. He had his own business and regularly distributes his business card to anyone who is even basically polite to him. He's an international expert on virtual meeting software like Zoom. He's a fame whore. 4. I was in high school in the 90s and working part-time in a grocery store. I was hired for the produce department. All my friends worked the front line, mostly bagging for cashiers and retrieving shopping carts. I have always been an overachiever at work, and I actually liked my job. My supervisors were all cool, and I was doing the job for extra spending money after school, so I wasn't heavily invested in it because I also delivered newspapers in the morning. Like I said, overachiever. The only thing that sucked was having to work weekends. One day I forgot my hat. Or maybe I just didn't feel like wearing it that day because I recently dyed my hair green and wanted to show it off. I don't remember. But I do know that there was no specific code about hair color in the handbook, and hats were only required if you were prepping food or in a section like the deli. My direct supervisor liked my hair and said I fit in great with all the veggies, and I should focus on stocking all the green stuff that shift. She was sure the customers would enjoy it. We both left, and I did my job. The juicy stuff. Anywho, a couple hours later, towards the end of my shift, this grumpy general manager, Bob, was not happy that I forgot my hat, and decided to grill me about it. We happened to be in front of the customer service desk at the time. He went on and on for a while about young people and poor work ethic. He was really on it about how lazy kids are and so on and so forth. Now keep in mind I always did my job well and never had any complaints or anything like that. This was my first time ever getting a speech from a boss like this. Eventually he got around to it and flat out asked me, "Where's your hat?" "Oh, well, gee Bob, I think I forgot it at home." "You forgot it at home? How could you forget it? You see, this is what I'm talking about. What if I took your paycheck home and forgot it there?" Now, I was not sure if he wanted an answer, so I stood there for what just felt like an eternity, just looking at him while my teenage brain was processing everything. "Well?" Bob asked again. Now I knew he actually expected me to answer, so I said, "Excuse me, Bob, I don't understand." His face started to crinkle with anger. The customer service ladies were watching intently, enjoying the show. "What don't you understand?" "Well, doesn't accounting handle the checks? I mean, you don't actually do anything with them." He started to look even angrier at this point, but I was too dumb to care, so I went on. "I mean, it's my understanding, so I don't know how my check could even get to your house unless you stole it or something from the accounting people." The customer service ladies bust out laughing. He looked at them sharply and told me to go home and think about what I did, and I would be lucky if I still had a job. I wasn't sure if I was being fired or not. I really was in some kind of shock. So I asked, "You mean I get to go home early tonight?" Again, the customer service ladies chuckle while trying to look busy. I went home, a little upset, but tried to look on the bright side. I got home early, did my homework, and relaxed. I went in for my shift the following day, only to find out I was taken off of the schedule. "Sorry, I don't see you on here. It looks like Bob changed the schedule. You're not on until next week." Just then, Bob strolls over with this "I got you now" look on his face, and I knew his game, so I smiled and said, "My God, that's great, it will be so nice to have a little vacation," I said, smiling, and thanked him. This really worked him over. I guess he couldn't actually fire me, so he was trying to make things bad for me, so he said, "Oh, one more thing. I don't think Produce is right for you. I've decided to move you to the front as punishment for insubordination. I've already filed the paperwork." "Oh, really? The front? Are you sure?" I had a smile, thinking you won. "Oh, that's fantastic. All my friends work over there, and that's the position I originally applied for. Thank you so much. I'll see you in a week." I left with the biggest smile on my face. When I finally came back, all the front managers officially welcomed me to their team. I was already quite friendly with many of them because I would help out up there from time to time. I was still getting my higher pay rate from Produce, and best of all, Bob never bothered me again. I got to goof off and work way less than before. Some of my fondest memories of that place are when I would just hang out in the parking lot with the other baggers, generally having a good time. Never got any other complaints there either. 5. I used to work at a hotel that is part of a very large hotel chain. The management at my hotel, as well as more senior management, was all about nepotism. If you were related to or friends with someone in upper management, then you had some amazing career prospects ahead. We got a new food and beverage manager who was a golf buddy of the general manager and the executive chef. We'll call him Houston. Houston had previously managed a number of top restaurants in the city, including a Michelin star restaurant. Strangely enough, he seemed to change jobs every 6 to 12 months. We soon found out why. The position he moved into oversaw 3 F&B departments, with around 300 staff all up. Very quickly we found out that, as well as not realizing that we weren't fine dining, Houston was the most horrible pig of a man that I'd ever had to work with. He was a very tall, large man who would use his size to physically intimidate other staff and managers. He would shout at anyone for any perceived mistake, real or imagined, that he saw. He was very handsy and often made seedy comments to the attractive young waitresses. Management would often attend events to eat and drink with guests while also making sure nothing went wrong. At one of these events, he got one of the young women in sales so drunk an ambulance had to be called, and she had her stomach pumped. He was just a horrible human being. As you can imagine, everyone from kitchen staff to waiters to managers were making complaints about him. I know that one manager had gone over the head of our GM and was slowly elevating the issue to higher and higher levels of management, heading towards a national level. The response that our HR department was sticking to was that Houston had been hired to shake things up. Apparently, they had expected a certain amount of friction to occur and had essentially been told to ignore any complaints that came their way. They had taken things through the proper channels and followed the correct procedures. There was nothing they could do. Their hands were tied. Enter our story's hero. So, the bar in this hotel was well run by a short Filipino man. We'll call him John. Because there were rarely any real issues at the bar, John had mostly been left alone by Houston. John had never seen Houston's bad side come out, and never personally had a problem with him. One day an issue did come up with the bar. It eventually turned out to be a management miscommunication, which was a very common thing. Thanks, management, but that was irrelevant at the time. So, Houston decides that the problem is John's fault, storms into the bar, and while John is serving and in front of staff, customers, and a supervisor, Houston absolutely lays into John, just like he has to every other supervisor and manager in his department already.
"What the fuck happened yesterday? A group complained to me this morning that we hadn't charged their account properly. Sort your shit out and do your job properly next time."
And picture this with a large 6-foot man getting right in the face of a 5-foot-tall Filipino while yelling abuse at absolutely the top of his voice. Houston stormed back to his office. John didn't take anyone's shit, and he followed Houston back to his office, while they shouted at each other in front of even more staff, supervisors, and another manager. Houston obviously didn't back down or apologize because this is how he had operated for the last 6 months, without any consequences. John went straight up to HR and told them exactly what had happened, and as usual, They told him there was nothing they could do. That seemed like it was going to be the end of it. That night, John went home and got some legal advice from a friend. Following the advice, he typed up an objective account of exactly what had happened, and included names of all staff who had witnessed the encounter. This showed how many people there were able to confirm his story. He emailed this to the entire management team, including team leaders, supervisors, and other departments, as well as each person in HR. This eliminated deniability on anyone's account, as well as keeping the whole hotel in the loop of what was going on. The next day, John took his written account down to the police station to file charges of workplace assault. He received a document from the police to confirm that he had filed charges. He then sent that document to the same mailing list of management and HR. By the time he had arrived at work that afternoon, the GM had started an inquiry into the issue that he had previously been completely unaware of. HR was claiming they had no idea what had been going on either. This was definitely the first time they were hearing of problems with Houston. Over the next few days, everyone in the F&B department from the team leader up was called into a meeting to discuss their experiences with Houston. At the end of the week, Houston was notified that he was to attend a meeting with the upper management and HR teams the next day. The next day came, and Houston went into his office, packed up his things, walked into the meeting, and slammed his note of resignation onto the desk. HR agreed to an immediate termination of his contract, and he walked out of the job that afternoon. After he left my hotel, he got a job at a very small, very average Mexican restaurant as a sommelier. He lasted about 3 months there. A few months later, one of the waitresses caught an Uber home after a night out. Guess who was the driver? Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 109. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then please do like, subscribe, and comment as well if you're feeling so inclined. Alright, this is a Sunday, isn't it? Yes, I believe it is. Looks like I may actually have time to relax today when we're done working. Some days it's a matter of procrastinate, or don't have the stories and then eventually get the stories, but it's late, so get the video made, then, because I've got up early, I just kind of, get the video uploaded and then sleep. But we're doing okay today. Had a good night's sleep. Woke up at a more reasonable time for me. Maybe not for everyone else, but a reasonable time for me. And I had no trouble getting my stories, so we're all good. Yay! I'll probably make some dinner and maybe watch some films. I've been catching up with the Chucky films. I kind of left off many, many years ago, literally decades ago, at Child's Play 3. When would that have been? Child's Play 3. Oh, let's see. The third one was 1991, and I really haven't seen one of them since at least the mid-90s. Let's say I saw Child's Play 3 maybe a year or so after it came out. So I didn't hate the films, I just kind of wasn't in the mood for them. I guess so at the point where they became the Chucky films instead of the Child's Play films, I kind of just stopped watching them. There was a kind of a thing in the UK where those films got a bit of a bad rep. Nothing to do with the films, like quite literally nothing to do with the films. But as always, when a crime happens, and there was quite a bad, horrific crime in the UK, and they try to blame the killers watching the Child's Play films as being the reason they did this horrible crime, as opposed to them just being evil fucks. I would submit to you that whenever anyone does anything bad, it's not because of a film, a song, whether you're playing it backwards or forwards, a video game or whatever, it's because the perpetrator are a bunch of evil fucks. But hey, I am not a psychologist. Or a brainomatorian. Whatever those words are. Psychiatrist, psychologist? Whatever. I'm not one of those. Anyway, and that may have it shouldn't have, because I was so young when it happened, it kind of coloured my opinion, but I was always kind of aware, and I thought, they sound kind of interesting. I was always aware of what was going on in each film, because you hear things, you read reviews and that. And I was sitting the other day, it was actually the day when I took off work because I was not feeling great at all. I thought, well, I need something to distract me. What could I do? I thought, well, I've not seen any of them since then, so that had been, well, let's see, that's 10, well, that's almost 30 years? Yowza. Yes, I had actually seen the other films at a very young age. Didn't corrupt me at all, so there you go. And I was like, well, I wonder if any of them are on any of my streaming services. It just so happened that, at least on the UK, the next two in the sequence, Bride of Chucky, Seed of Chucky, so the next two were available. Don't know where I'm going to find the others, but yeah, so I managed to watch those two and I actually rather enjoyed them. They were quite fun. So I think it's another 2 or 3 films and a TV series to watch. Anyway, I'm going to shut up now and head off because, well, that was quite the ramble. So until next time, thank you very much for listening and take very good care of yourself.